The film opens inside a secret facility where a prisoner is carefully sketching a cityscape on the bare wall of his cell while two armed soldiers stand watching over him. When he finally sets down his tool and steps back, the prisoner collapses to the floor from sheer exhaustion. One of the soldiers leans in to study the drawing and recognizes it immediately. It is a detailed depiction of a well-known public square somewhere in Italy. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, a young boy named Michele is pedaling his bicycle through the streets on his way to school. Along the route, he stops in front of a costume shop, intending to buy a Spider-Man outfit for an upcoming school party. The shop, however, is locked up tight, and the owner refuses to let him in despite his knocking. At school, Michele takes his seat directly behind a girl he has been quietly in love with for some time, a classmate named Stella. Before he can gather the nerve to say anything to her, he is mocked by a school bully named Brando. The moment is cut short when a police officer named Giovanna walks into the classroom. She is there to ask whether anyone knows the whereabouts of a student named Martino, who has been missing for 2 days. The class offers nothing useful. No one seems to know what happened to him. Giovanna asks them all to contact the police if they hear anything, then walks over to Michele and hands him a small snack she packed for him, revealing to the rest of the class that she is his mother. After she leaves, Michele's nose begins to bleed. He excuses himself and hurries to the bathroom. He barely makes it inside before the bully Brando and his friend Ivan appear and corner him, taunting him with a small electronic device. They shove him against the tiled wall and dig through his shoe, finding the money he had hidden there and pocketing it without a second thought. Michele tries to fight back but is completely outmatched. Ivan counts down from a few seconds, threatening to activate the device, and Michele has no choice but to bolt. He sprints through the school corridors with Ivan close behind, who manages to catch him with one last swing before letting him go. That afternoon, Michele arrives home in a foul mood. He passes his sister Candela in the hallway without a word and retreats to his bedroom. Sitting on his bed, he pulls up a social media post advertising a Halloween party and decides that what little money he has left is going toward finding a new costume. He makes his way to a dusty old costume shop on a narrow street and asks if they carry anything related to superheroes. The shopkeeper disappears into the back and returns holding a full bodysuit with a small cape attached, telling Michele it belongs to a legendary Chinese hero. Michele eyes it skeptically, but buys it anyway. Back at the police station, Giovanna is working late and growing increasingly frustrated by the lack of evidence in the Martino case. She comes home that evening to find Michele already dressed in his new costume and sitting rigidly on the couch, refusing to go to the party because he is convinced everyone will laugh at him. Giovanna studies him for a moment and tells him he looks great. At the party, Michele wanders through the crowd of costumed classmates and eventually works up the courage to approach Stella, explaining that he is dressed as a Chinese superhero. Before the conversation can go anywhere, the bullies hijack the room's screen and start playing footage of Stella walking through the streets, clearly filmed without her knowledge. Stella spins around, demanding to know who recorded her. The bullies point at Michele and suggest she ask him. Stella turns on him, eyes blazing, and asks directly if he was the one filming her. Mortified and unable to speak, Michele shoves through the crowd and barricades himself inside the bathroom. His classmates pound on the door from outside, yelling at him to come out. Standing alone in front of the mirror, Michele stares at his own reflection and screams that he wishes he could just disappear. The lights flicker and go out. In the darkness, Michele climbs through the small bathroom window and drops into the street below. The next morning, Michele wakes up feeling hollow. He brushes it off and goes through his morning routine without thinking much of it. When he steps into the bathroom to brush his teeth and looks into the mirror, he sees only his bathrobe hanging in the air and the toothbrush moving on its own. His reflection is completely gone. He rushes to the larger mirror in the hallway and confirms what he feared. He has turned invisible. His mother steps into the room seconds later and sees nothing but an empty bathrobe crumpled on the floor. She begins looking around the room in confusion. Michele grabs a pen and scrawls a quick note saying he left for school early, then slips out of the house. He arrives at school wearing a loose set of clothes and spends the morning watching Stella from across the courtyard. But even as he watches her, a quiet sadness settles over him. Being invisible does not make any of this easier. She still cannot see him, and she never will in the way he actually wants. He drifts into the classroom, completely undetected by everyone around him. Taking advantage of his invisibility, he decides to settle a score. He locates Ivan's electronic device on his desk, picks it up, and activates it, nearly shocking the teacher in the process. The teacher immediately assumes it belongs to Ivan, grabs it off the desk, and drags him out of the room toward the principal's office. Next, Michele makes his way to the tennis courts, where Brando is in the middle of a practice session. Invisible and unbothered, Michele interferes with every shot, nudging the ball, shifting its trajectory, causing Brando to miss repeatedly and grow increasingly unhinged. Later, in the changing room, Brando sits alone trying to figure out what went wrong on the court. Michele picks up a spare ball and bounces it against the wall, calling out to him in a low voice. Hearing his name with no one in sight, Brando leaps to his feet and runs out of the room in a panic. On his way out, Michele notices a group of girls heading into the girls' changing room, and among them, Stella. Against better judgment, he slips in after them. A moment later, one of the girls tosses a towel into the air without looking, and it lands squarely over Michele's head, outlining his shape. The girls freeze, staring at the vaguely human form standing in front of them. Before Michele can react, his power cuts out entirely. The girl pulls the towel away, and there he is, completely visible. Later that day, Michele sits in the car beside his mother, who gives him a thorough and well-deserved lecture about his behavior. By the time they pull into the driveway, she has forgiven him, but made her feelings very clear. The following day, a psychologist named Michele visits the school to give a talk on adolescent mental health. 2 students from Michele's year have left home without warning in the past month, and Michele believes it is important to understand what drives young people to such extremes. As Michele sits listening to the lecture, he notices something strange. His hands begin to glow faintly and then vanish before his eyes. When the session ends, Michele moves quickly, slipping out of the building before anyone around him can notice that parts of him are disappearing. He heads straight home, but when he pushes open his bedroom door, he finds Candela sitting on his bed. He immediately asks her to leave, not wanting her to witness anything unusual. Candela gives him a suspicious look, walks out, and pulls the door shut behind her. Unaware that she is still there, Michele removes his clothing and stands in front of the mirror, his face completely invisible. She lets out a scream that rattles the windows. Michele clamps a hand over her mouth and hisses at her to be quiet. No one can find out about this. Once Candela calms down enough to think, she decides that the costume Michele bought must have somehow given him supernatural abilities. She starts calling him a superhero on the spot. Meanwhile, at the police station, the psychologist Basile has been brought in to consult with Giovanna on the disappearances. The two work alongside each other as the case grows more complicated. That evening, Giovanna returns home talking on the phone and does not realize that Michele, still invisible, is standing in the same room, listening to every word. During the call, she mentions that Michele is adopted. The words hit him like a blow to the chest. He backs away from her slowly, barely managing to slip out of the room without being spotted. He needs air. He walks down to the beach near their house and drops into one of the swings. Then Stella appears. She stops when she notices the swing moving on its own, and rather than running, she tilts her head and asks, quietly and calmly, if he is a ghost. Something about his presence does not frighten her. She asks if they can be friends. Michele drags the tip of his finger through the sand and draws a small, smiling face. Stella crouches down to look at it and smiles back. She asks him a few gentle questions and even offers him a piece of candy, which he pretends to accept in keeping with the ghost act. When she eventually says goodnight and walks away, Michele lingers on the beach and notices a man some distance away watching him. The man leans on a walking stick and moves slowly when he finally turns to leave. Michele assumes from his deliberate pace that he is blind and thinks nothing more of it. Later that night, Michele makes his way to Stella's house. He draws the same smiling face on her front door. Stella opens the door moments later. She recognizes the face from the beach and steps aside to let him in. They sit together in the quiet of her room, and then, gradually, they lean toward each other and share a kiss. But Michele's power begins failing again. He pulls away and disappears into the night before his face becomes visible. The next day, Stella is at gymnastics practice. She stumbles through a sequence and her coach tears into her without holding back. The coach announces she is stepping out for coffee and leaves Stella alone in the gym. A tranquilizer dart cuts through the air and catches Stella in the arm. She drops to the mat before she can make a sound. At that same moment, Michele has decided to come to the gym to finally reveal his ability to Stella. He arrives with his dog trotting beside him, only to find a masked figure carrying Stella's unconscious body toward the exit. Michele charges forward without thinking, his dog barking and snapping at the intruder's heels. The masked figure shoves them both aside and disappears through a side door with Stella in his arms. When the authorities arrive, the picture begins to shift. The missing students were not simply running away from home. Someone has been taking them. Giovanna finds Michele outside the gym and tries to reassure him, telling him they will get to the bottom of it. Inside the facility where the students are being held, Stella wakes up disoriented. Wires are attached to her head and the room is dim and clinical. Back at home, Michele hunts through his room for his superhero suit and finds it spinning in the washing machine, completely waterlogged. He storms into the living room and confronts his mother, furious, telling her that by washing the suit, she destroyed his powers. Then, before she can respond, he tells her he knows he is not her biological son. He walks out of the house. In the holding facility, Stella is examined and then moved into a cell. Already inside are Martino and another classmate who had gone missing weeks earlier. On the beach, Michele sits alone in the gathering dark until the same slow-moving man from the night before appears beside him. Before Michele can say a single word, the man begins answering the questions forming in his mind. Michele asks who he is. The man says his name is Andre. Then he tells Michele that he is his biological father. Michele refuses to accept it and steps toward him, shaking his head. But Andre begins to speak. He explains that he once lived an ordinary life until a battle erupted in the region where he and many others were living. An explosion tore through the area, killing thousands. Those who survived found that the blast had altered their DNA in ways science could not fully explain. Some of them began developing abilities and powers far beyond normal human capacity. These individuals were classified as special and transferred to a military compound where they were pushed to train their abilities to their absolute limits. But the more they used their powers, the more their bodies deteriorated over time. In Andre's case, his eyesight gradually failed him completely. There was another consequence as well. Virtually all of them became incapable of having children, all except Andre and a woman named Yelena, who would become Michele's mother. The birth of a new special was considered a scientific impossibility. The moment he came into the world, agents arrived to seize him. His parents fled with him in the middle of the night. For a time, they managed to stay hidden. Andre could read minds, and Yelena had the power to become invisible. Together, they stayed one step ahead, but during an ambush, Yelena was killed by the agents. Andre, fearing for Michele's life, used his ability to read the mind of a nearby woman named Giovanna. He saw that she was trustworthy and kind, and he left his son in her care. Years passed. The agents eventually learned Michele was still alive and began capturing young people in an effort to draw him out. Michele stands very still after the story ends. Everything clicks into place. Back at Giovanna's house, a group of officers arrives to ask her questions. When she admits that Michele is adopted, something shifts in Basile's expression. On the beach, Andre notices a fisherman nearby beginning to watch them with growing suspicion. Reaching for his phone, Andre turns toward the man and quietly erases the memory of the last few minutes from his mind. Before parting ways with Michele, Andre hands him a specially designed suit that will allow him to turn invisible at will, rather than depending on uncontrolled bursts of power. Shortly after, Giovanna arrives on the beach with Basile and the officers, and they question the fisherman about whether he saw anyone. The man stares at them blankly and says he has no idea what they are referring to. Giovanna spots Michele nearby and calls him over, telling him it is time to go home. Basile steps in and offers to accompany them, and Giovanna accepts without hesitation. She mentions that she needs to stop at the vet on the way to pick up Michele's dog. At the house, Michele runs upstairs to try on his new suit, while Basile moves around the kitchen below, preparing tea. Basile's curiosity gets the better of him, and he begins climbing the stairs. He nearly opens the door to Michele's room at exactly the wrong moment, but Michele hears him coming in time and switches back to his regular clothes before the door opens. Downstairs in the kitchen, Michele's eyes fall on Basile's hand. There is a bite mark on it, in precisely the same spot where his dog had sunk its teeth into the man who took Stella. Everything becomes clear in an instant. Michele moves to leave, but every door in the house has already been locked from the inside. He bolts up the stairs, pulls on his suit, and turns invisible just as Basile reaches the top landing. Basile sweeps the hallway with his eyes and finds nothing. He thinks for a moment, then opens a bag of flour and begins casting handfuls of it into the air. The flour settles on Michele's invisible outline and traces his silhouette clearly. Basile follows the footprints, corners Michele in a back room, and hurls him against the wall. The impact breaks Michele's concentration, and he flickers back into view. Michele spots a lever on the wall nearby and wrenches it down. A folding bed crashes from the ceiling and pins Basile to the floor. Michele does not waste another second. He slips out of the house and runs. A few streets away, he runs into Ivan, who is sitting astride his motorcycle. Without explaining anything, Michele climbs on behind him and tells him to drive. Ivan, completely convinced a ghost has just materialized on the back of his bike, floors the throttle. Michele holds on as they tear through the streets and leave Basile far behind. When they finally stop in a quieter part of town, Michele steps off the bike and reveals himself to Ivan. He explains everything: the disappearances, Basile, the facility. Ivan listens without interrupting. Later that night, Ivan tells Michele that Brando has also been taken recently. In addition to Stella and Martino, he says he wants to help get them back. Ivan loads up a bag with every piece of electronic equipment he owns and declares himself ready. Inside the facility, Stella convinces the others to attempt an escape through a ventilation shaft. She is the only one small enough to make it through. She moves carefully through the building, slipping past guards, until she finds her way up to a rooftop observation tower. Inside, she finds a large industrial spotlight. She positions it and uses the beam to draw a smiling face against the night sky, the same one Michele always draws, and aims it as high as she can, far across the city. He and Ivan get back on the motorcycle and follow the light. They find the building, but before they can get inside, Stella is spotted by guards and pulled back in. Ivan pulls out his equipment and deliberately triggers a short circuit that knocks out the power across the entire building. In the darkness, Michele activates his suit, turns invisible, and slips inside undetected. Making his way to the control room, he looks through the window and sees Basili and several armed men standing over Giovanna and Andre, who have arrived together, following their own trail to the same place. Michele does not hesitate. He knocks one guard out from behind, then forces the remaining one to unlock the cells. Stella and the other students stumble out, blinking in the dim emergency lighting. Michele makes himself visible in front of them. They stare at him in disbelief. Before they can head for the exit, Stella grabs Michele's arm and insists on checking on an elderly man she noticed locked in a cell deeper in the building. Michele follows her to the cell, and the moment they step inside, Stella turns and points a strange device directly at him. Then she collapses. The elderly man rises slowly from his cot. He explains, with a calm that is somehow more frightening than anger, that he possesses the power to control the minds of others. He has been the one pulling Basili's strings from the beginning, and now he has been directing Stella as well, using her to lead Michele into the room. He loads Michele and the unconscious Stella onto a waiting submarine, and the vessel pushes out to sea. Once they are underway, the man tells Michele where they are headed, to Yelena, his biological mother, who is still alive. On the surface, Giovanna and Andre find Basili locked in a storage room aboard the docked vessel. He is bewildered and has no memory of giving any orders. Giovanna demands to know where Michele is. Basili genuinely cannot tell her. Andre reads his mind and confirms he is telling the truth. He then tells Giovanna they need to leave the ship immediately. It has been rigged to explode. They gather the rescued students and run. The ship detonates behind them. On the submarine, Michele discovers something new within himself. Pushed to the edge by rage and fear, he reaches inward and finds a power he has never accessed before, the ability to move objects with his mind. He lets it out. Everything around him shakes. The agents are thrown off their feet. Michele tears through the vessel, fights his way to Stella, and pulls her free. They surface together and swim toward the harbor. On the docks, a crowd has gathered. Giovanna, Andre, and the rescued students are already there. Standing in front of everyone, Michele activates his suit and turns invisible, demonstrating what he can do. The crowd watches in stunned silence. Andre steps forward and announces to Michele that he is going to erase the memory of everyone present. If the agents cannot trace Michele through the people who know him, he will be safer. Michele understands. He turns to Stella and kisses her one last time. Then the memories are taken and everyone goes home. In the film's closing moments, somewhere far from the city, Yelena, Michele's true mother, is revealed to be very much alive. She has survived everything that came before and now commands a small and capable team of her own. One of her operatives approaches and tells her that while Michele was not captured, they have located someone else, a girl named Natasha, Michele's twin sister. The screen cuts briefly to a moment from years past, Andre running through the dark with two small children in his arms. And with that, the story ends. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the like button, and take the opportunity to watch the other amazing recaps that are appearing for you. I'll be signing off now, and I'll see you in the next video.